Buenas noches and welcome to the 42nd Legislative District Candidate Forum, co-hosted by the Whatcom County League of Women Voters and Bellingham High School Civic and AP Government classes. Before we begin, I would like to read our land acknowledgement. The land we stand on is the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Lummi and Nooksack people, the original inhabitants of Washington's northernmost coast in southern British Columbia. Since time immemorial, they've celebrated and cared for their land and waters to perpetuate their way of life. Please join me in a deep gratitude for their ongoing wisdom and guidance as we take a moment to honor their ancestors and acknowledge the past, present, and future of Lummi and Nooksack people as the original inhabitants of this land. My name is Coral, and I'm a senior here at Bellingham High School. I serve as our school's ASB president. I think that being civically engaged is important because it informs young adults, educates, and teaches people to understand our government system. In addition, actively being part of my community helps me and others exchange and expand ideas to improve our society. A couple of reminders for tonight's forum. 1, please turn off your cell phones. 2, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization which encourages informed and active participation on citizens and government. 3, no video recording by the audience is permitted, but tonight's forum is being broadcasted live and recorded by the VTV Bellingham. It will be rebroadcasted on Comcast channels 321 and 10 on KMRE 88 FM Community Radio, and on demand on the Bellingham YouTube channel through Election Day, November 5th. 4, links will be available through the League of Women Voters website. Now please welcome Rebecca Johnson as one of our moderators for tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. It's the League of Women Voters of Bellingham and Whatcom County's sincere pleasure to work with Bellingham High School and Mrs. Jennifer Rydell's students this evening. My name is Rebecca Johnson, and I'll be the League of Women Voters moderator tonight. I want to thank our media partners, KMRE 88 FM Community Radio and BTV. As Carl's mentioned, the recordings will be available on YouTube through our website. Founded in 1921, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. To that end, we work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League never endorses a candidate or a party. Membership is open to both men and women 16 years and older, and we invite all of you to join us. We say democracy is not a spectator sport. Membership information is also available on our website. So let's get started. Tonight's forum is for candidates for Washington State Legislative District 42, and there are 2 positions of which 2 candidates on the ballot, and I'd like to first introduce for position 1, Raymond Pelletti and Alicia Rule. And then in position 2, we have Kamal Bhachu and Joe Timmons. Yes, great. We love candidates. The Washington State Legislature is a bicameral body with 49 members in the Senate and 98 members in the House of Representatives, and each district is served by 1 senator and 2 House members. The citizen legislature meets annually on the 2nd Monday in January in the ornate Capitol building in Olympia. In odd number years, like the one we're coming up, which is the budget year, the legislature it's supposed to meet for only 105 days, and in the even-numbered years, it's a 60-day session. House members are elected to 2-year terms. So we're going to follow the following specific rules for our debate. There will be no opening statements, but instead our introductory question is tailored to elicit responses that would be consistent with an opening question. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and will make a 1-minute closing statement. The order of the questions and the closing statement is by seat alphabetically. And then each of you have a challenging card. So if you want to hold up your challenge card, this is the fun part. Candidates may use this challenge card to challenge or rebut their opponent's response. And the challenging candidate will have 30 seconds to state the challenge, and then the opponent will have 30 seconds to respond to the challenge. And each candidate gets to use that challenge card against their opponents one time. We have timers in the front, Carol Camo and Michelle Kapcha, who are very well-heeled timers for the league, and they're going to be tracking the time. So the timers are going to flash a yellow paddle down here. I hope you guys can see Carol. When there's a 15 seconds left and a red paddle when the time is out. And I'm going to ask you to stop talking at that time if necessary. I'm going to keep my eye on them rather than y'all. And then we will ask that the candidates be respectful of the time allotted due to the limited amount of time that we have and our desire to include as many questions as possible. So in addition to our traditional League of Women Voters question team, members of Mrs. Rydell's class have been working to write nonpartisan questions which address their concerns, and they're going to be coming up to the podium to ask their questions. Members of the audience are also able to submit questions. There were students at the door who had paper and pen that when you came in. So if any of you have a question you'd like to see answered, raise your card up and one of the students will come get it, and we're going to try to work those in. Students, and then the students are going to screen those questions to make sure there's not redundancy. Okay, so we've got the rules covered. Let's get started. Timers, are you ready? We have a bell too, since it's kind of hard to see. And candidates, you're going to each have, again, 2 minutes to respond to the question. We're going to start with Mr. Pelletti, and our first question is, the Cascadia Daily reports that nearly all school districts in Whatcom County are cutting their budgets due to decreased state funding as a result of declining enrollments. Buildings still need maintenance. A class of 20 as opposed to 25 still requires a teacher, and resource personnel such as librarians are still essential. Do you believe the state's funding formula based on enrollment provides adequate funding to our schools? If yes, why? If no, what funding strategy would you propose to help underfunded schools?
Is it on?
It's on,
Okay.
nicely
Thank
tested.
you. Well, first of all, thank you for the question. Second, thank you for having us here. We appreciate your time coming out. And I'd like to take a second and, if you want, give your prayers and thoughts to the people in the southeast part of our country. It's devastating. Not since the Civil War have I seen where they told people to write on your body your name and a phone number to contact somebody in case we find you. So that's what they did in the Civil War so they could locate relatives. All right, the state of Washington, that's a complex question because when enrollment's down, that means parents are putting their kids in other sources, such as private schools, Christian schools, charter schools, and the question is why? And the why can be a lot of answers, but the biggest part is they feel that the schools are not providing the resources, the education, and the curriculum for their students. Funding got cut back. I know we have the court ruling that said the state of Washington will fund all the schools at 100%. We've not done that. What we've done is taken the money and spent it elsewhere. So the first thing is we have to have an accountability of where the money went. We have to look at the way it's funded and how we generate that money. Every student and every school across our state has to have a reasonably good education so that they can be competitive in the world and our workplace. Without it, we're going to fall behind further in the world stage, and we need to be doing better.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Rule, it's your turn. If you want, let me know if anybody wants me to repeat the question.
It's fine, thank you. Yes, I'm highly concerned about the state of our public education system in Washington right now. It's not hard to see right in our backyards. All of our schools have been impacted by the implementation of the McCleary decision, which was made before my time in the legislature. I'm especially worried about two of our schools, Mount Baker and Blaine, that are in dire straits. This has been a situation that's been brewing for a while, and I saw it coming and introduced, I think it was 7 total bills to try to address this. I will continue to work hard for funding for our schools. We need librarians. We need to make sure that really the bottom line, regardless of enrollment, is that the schools need more money. So we need to prioritize that, and I would say for not a better than average, but a world-class education. Our students really deserve to have, I think what public schools are is an equity issue. I mean, really, it's one of our biggest tools, and right now it does matter what zip code that you live in, what kind of an education you get. So I will continue to fight for our students, particularly those of us who are not living in Seattle or the metro areas, to get an equitable education. It's a real problem. I'm concerned about what's happening, and I will continue to fight hard for our youth in this area, especially looking toward increasing funding, but especially for behavioral health in our schools. We know that we are seeing still lots of crises with our youth, and we're concerned about that. I'm very concerned that teachers aren't getting the support they need and that our students aren't getting the education they need. I'll continue working toward increased funding for special education increases, which I've been fighting for since the day I got into the legislature, and for general funding as well. Thank you.
That's great. All right, Mr. Timmons, you're next. Do you want me to ask the question again?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so just, we've heard the reports from the Cascadia Daily News that nearly all the school districts in the state are cutting their budgets due to decreased state funding as a result of declining enrollment. Buildings are in need of maintenance. A class of 20 as opposed to 25 still needs a teacher, and resource personnel such as librarians are still essential. Do you believe the state's funding formula based on enrollment provides adequate funding to our schools? And if yes, why? And if no, what funding strategy would you propose to help underfunded schools?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for this question, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name's Joe Timmons. I am just finishing up my first term in the state legislature. And part of the reason I ran for this position is because it's our state's paramount duty in our state constitution to provide a quality education for Washingtonians. And I deeply believe in public education. I'm a product of Washington State Public Schools myself. My wife Heather graduated here from Bellingham High School, and our son Malcolm, when he's old enough, will go here as well. No, frankly, I don't think our state is meeting our obligation. Representative Rule mentioned the McCleary decision, which was passed before my time in the legislature as well, the fix for that. And I think that we need to reevaluate how we fund schools in this state. I believe that students in Blaine and Bellingham and Mount Baker deserve the same educational opportunities as students in Bellevue. And so as long as I'm in this position, I'm going to continue to fight for that. One thing that I've done, along with colleagues in the legislature, is help have a historical investment for special education the last 2 years. That has helped our districts in terms of trying to navigate the funding loss for decreasing enrollments, but we have more work to do for that. I met with 2 school superintendents in our district earlier this week. I've been going around and meeting with folks to hear about how we can help address this issue, and I hear a lot of reasons why. We have insurance rates for schools that are going up. We have declining enrollments due to lacking birth rates and for various other reasons. And so I think we need to look at holistically how we fund our schools. I think we have a new crop of legislators since the McCleary decision that can look at it objectively and say what's working and what's not working. And I think that also needs to include capital facilities. So as long as I'm in this position, I will be committed to that, and I appreciate the question.
Okay. All right, Mr. Bhachu.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I hope I'm not talking too loud. My name is Kamal Bhachu. I'm running for the House of Representatives. This is my old stomping ground, Bellingham High School. In 1996, this is where I started my life journey in America. And as an ESL student, we had a huge need for ESL teachers in this school when I first started. We didn't even have a ESL program that was really up to the standards. So one of the teachers, Lori French, if you guys know her, please say thank you to her for me. And it was very important to get that program up and running, and that it takes money to start those special type of programs. So there's a lot I have to agree with Alicia and Joe and what Ray Pelletti said. McCleary decision, that's also we have to be looked into. And currently Blaine is really getting hit hard by some of the budget cuts and also the lack of new student enrollments. Right now, they don't even have a librarian, and as a matter of fact, they had to cut a bus service to Point Roberts. So parents are bringing their kids to school; they have to do it themselves. And also, we have to look into why those fundings are missing. The one other issue that I want to bring up, during COVID, a lot of the federal funds that came to the schools, and money was spent. And I don't think people really managed the money that well. And also the lack of accountability in our education system. I would love to know where the money is being spent on and where it's going. And I would like to look into that. And also why the enrollment is down. Enrollment went down after COVID when parents found out what their kids were learning and what they weren't being taught. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Rosa up now to ask a question, and just Mr. Bhachu, you're going to be the first one answering this one. So here we go.
My name is Rosa Herndon Shepard, and I'm a senior here at Bellingham High School. I think being civically engaged is important because a community that involves and engages all will lead to a healthy democracy and an inclusive environment for everyone. My question for the candidates is, how do you believe youth are being affected by homelessness? And what is the first action, if any, you would take to alleviate that impact?
That is a really good question. I would like you to repeat that question for me one more time, please.
Okay, and thankfully we have it here, which is great. How do you believe youth are being affected by homelessness? And what is the first action, if any, you would take to alleviate that impact?
Okay, so right now we have lack of housing, and we also have lack of better paying jobs for the parents. And I will speak from my personal experiences. When we first moved here, I literally had to go out and get a second job because I had to support my family. After school, I would go work at McDonald's. After I stopped working at McDonald's, I would walk over to the mall and go at this Indian restaurant and scrub dishes. That's what I did for $5 an hour. So, and also, when I mentioned there's a lack of affordable housing, and so not having good jobs in this area and lack of affordable housing is also affecting local residents. And the cost of living has also gone up. And every day we're paying more money for groceries at the gas station. So there's a lot of things that we have to look into. It's just not straight and simple issues. It will take some teamwork at Olympia between both parties, Republicans and the Democrats. We may need to cut some of the regulation that around the housing, and also we need to look into attracting business that are better businesses that pays better. We have to attract those type of businesses too. That may also look into giving those businesses some type of incentives to bring those jobs to the Whatcom County. Yeah, that's what I would look into.
That's great, thank you. Mr. Timmons, do you want me to repeat? Yes, please. Okay, so what do you believe, or how do you believe youth are being affected by homelessness, and what is the first action, if any, you would take to alleviate that impact?
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. It's so important. I think sometimes we think of homelessness and housing issues as separate, and I think they're so interconnected. I appreciate that my opponent brought up a lack of housing in our community, and that's something that I think we really need to address in order to ensure that we have roofs over people's heads. So first and foremost, I want to touch on what I worked on this last few years, and then I'll touch into the question of what would I do next. I think first and foremost, we have a demand that far exceeds supply in our community in terms of a housing shortage. We passed a bill in 2023 to increase density in cities, to build more housing, more quadplexes, duplexes, and so forth, to provide more units. I know firsthand the challenges that some families are experiencing when it comes to rent hikes. In 2021, our rent went up 35% just down the street here in Bellingham. We had a one-year-old at the time, and it was really challenging on us. And so I think we need to build more to ultimately have more units, which will reduce homelessness because people have more housing options and opportunities. And I think that we need to do more to protect renters. We had a bill for a rent stabilization bill that would have capped rent at 7% across the state and had an exemption for new buildings. And that's something that I really hope to prioritize this coming session as well. We passed it out of the House and it died in the Senate. We also got $250,000 in the capital budget this last year to provide more housing in our community through Northwest Youth Services for homeless youth. We know that homeless youth in our community are more likely to be identified as LGBTQ+ and have other health risks involved. So we need to take care of our youth experiencing homelessness, and we need to ensure that youth that are not only experiencing homelessness now, but also maybe not having stable housing options through their family are protected. And that's something that I'll commit to doing if reelected.
Great, thank you. All right, Ms. Rule, do you want me to repeat?
Yes,
I'm happy
please.
to, yeah. How do you believe youth are being affected by homelessness? And what is the first action, if any, you'd take to alleviate that impact?
Great. Yes, thank you for the question. You know, something I learned early on in my social work career is that we really don't get to treat or understand youth without understanding the family system in which they belong. So while looking at youth homelessness, it's really important for us to understand the housing crisis. We are significantly short on housing units in our community across this state, and even with the pace that you're going to see is going to pick up because of those two bills, over the next 10 and 20 years, we're behind. We have to build more units, so I'm really glad that we've made progress in that area. We need to continue making progress in that area. We did pass a bill last session that streamlined some of the regulations and some of the processes. We need to continue doing that, and we need to build more units and more homes. The supply and demand is not in correlation with what we need. So we continue to work on those pieces for families. But I also want to tell you what I've done for youth homelessness. I've been a prime sponsor on multiple bills in this area. We've expanded the definition of homelessness so that more kids could qualify for services. And we continue to work toward programs in the public school systems, as well as expanding some of those early learning programs. All of these things are an ecosystem in which kids can thrive. But the reality is, in this moment, we have a lot of students who are going to school and not knowing where they're going to go home afterwards. People packing extra clothes in their backpack because they don't know if they're going to be able to go to a locked door when they go home. So we need expanded behavioral health services. We need expanded youth homelessness services. And I was also able to secure additional money specifically for our community for kids living in their cars, which is a passion area for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pelletti, want me to repeat? Okay. How do you believe youth are being affected by homelessness? And what is the first action, if any, you'd take to alleviate that impact?
It's unfair in our country to have youth at risk, being homeless, living in their cars, couch surfing, living with friends, living out of a backpack, living in their cars. We are an abundant nation. So I have to go back and say, how did we get here? We've not taken the responsibility and the effort to put programs together in place, fund them, and make them available to our youth. We need to do that. You can't leave them out there to suffer and survive on their own. We can identify these youth. I'm sure we have. We have lots of facilities where we can pretend they're in the military. We have dorms. We have spaces where they can stay. There's plenty of places for food. I was at the Lighthouse Mission a couple weeks ago. They can serve 1,500 meals a day there. They've got a lot of capacity. That's an option for people. That's going to open up more beds and more places down there in Bellingham. we have to remember we're responsible for what we have, and we haven't taken that responsibility exactly as strong as we should. So I believe that we can put the programs together and instigate them and make them effective immediately and get our kids back off the streets. Building houses for students isn't going to help because we don't have enough housing for the adults. So where are the kids going to go? We need to take them, and because they don't have anybody that they can go home to, we then have to take that burden up and make it a reality. It's a responsibility. You're not being mean when you tell people they have to go to a certain facility, and they can be there, there's a shower, it's safe, it's warm, they have food, and they will be protected there, and they will be treated well.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start with you, Ms. Rule, on our third question. If Initiative 2117 is approved and the Climate Commitment Act is repealed, what would you propose, if anything, to replace the funding allocated in the Climate Commitment Act to protect the environment?
Thank you for this question. I think this question fits within a larger picture of how we manage our money. We must budget and spend within our priorities. So we budget to our values, and it will need to be included one way or the other, whether it passes or not. It's going to need to be included. And clearly, if we, just like at home, if you don't have enough money in one bucket, you are going to have to shift things. So I would urge people to think that through when they're making their decision on that. But I do think that we will be budgeting toward our values, and it's going to be hard work, and I will continue to do what I have done up until this point, which is represent you all in our shared values of the 42nd District well.
Thank you. Mr. Pelletti, you want me to repeat it?
Yes, you don't mind.
You bet. If Initiative 217 is approved and the Climate Commitment Act is repealed, what would you propose, if anything, to replace funding allocated in the Climate Commitment Act to protect the environment?
First of all, we have to be good stewards of our environment. That doesn't mean whether we have one bill pass and we get money or we don't. We have to take care of our environment. We're all responsible for what we have. That bill was brought up as a cap and trade bill, and what it was designed to do and what it was sold as is being 1 to 2 cents on the gallon of gas. Well, it's almost 50 cents a gallon on a gallon of gas and 53 cents a gallon on diesel. So you have to go back and why are our food prices so high? Why are our rents up? Why are our clothing costs up? They're all up because we're paying more for services and goods than we were 2 years ago. So if this bill is passed, which means it's been repealed, we spend and we collect tons of money for the environment. And one of the things that, just for a segue, if you ever need to look up something, look up the Milankovitch theory. The Milankovitch theory says between 26,000 years, we have one glacial period, and guess where we're at now? We're in the interglacial period, which means we're going to another glacial period. And one of the phenomenons of this theory is just before the Earth tilts and swings around the sun at a certain point, temperatures rise. It's already been predicted. We've known about this for a long time. This will happen anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 years before the Earth switches its orbit a little bit and tilts on its axis. So we know that the temperatures were going up, and if you read a Farmer's Almanac, you would know that. We have to be stewards of our environment. We have to fund our environment and take care of it, and we can do that, and we don't need this issue to stay on the books.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Bhachu, you have the question now. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Okay. If Initiative 2117 is approved and the Climate Commitment Act is repealed, what would you propose, if anything, to replace the funding allocated in the Climate Commitment Act to protect the environment?
So the first thing first, in the state of Washington, we have $19 billion in surplus at the moment. So we don't have the money problem what we do have is where are we going to spend our money? That's the problem we do have. What I would like to talk about, what Ray touched a little bit, that with 2117, the cost of the living has gone up. When it was first brought up, we were promised that the cost of gas will only go up by a couple of cents, but that did not happen. It went up by anywhere from 43 to 50 cents. And another issue that I would like to bring everyone's attention to when it comes down to environment, we have to look at our surroundings and how we live our lives every day. It's up to us how we're going to protect the environment. And another thing I would like to bring up is some of the homeless encampment locally. And when you drive by those, you'll notice they're almost pushing their way out onto the streets. There's trash everywhere. They're literally a biohazard. If you look at it, there are needles in those encampments. Police officers can't go in those encampments. People, when they have to go to the bathroom, where do they go? They go right there. There was an article done by local newspaper that in order to clean those sites, especially behind the Walmart, it will cost the city of Bellingham a little over $6 million. And that money will come out of our pockets, each and every one of us. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Timmons, do you want me to repeat?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you for this question. I just want to start by recognizing I'm not sure exactly where my opponent, the surplus he's talking about. When I talk about with budget chairs in Olympia, we're facing a deficit this coming biennium, and we have our work cut out for us. And this initiative on the ballot will only make challenges worse when it comes to our budgets. And I want to also go back to where we started today. We talked about a hurricane impacting Florida. This is October. The largest hurricane in my life that I remember was Katrina in August. The reality is that climate change is real, climate change is happening, and it's having impacts on humans across the globe, and I'm proud to live in a state doing something about it. So this is on the ballot this year, 2117. I urge you to vote no. I urge you to protect the Climate Commitment Act. Please join me in voting no. I want my son, who's 4 years old, to be able to grow up in this community and grow up on this planet. But I also want to talk about what that funding what this initiative will take funding away from. The Climate Commitment Act funds ride-free services for everyone 18 and under on Amtrak, on Metro, on public buses. It also funds electrification for vehicles across the state, and electrification charging stations, and electrification of school buses, so that students waiting to get an education don't have to breathe in diesel fumes. It also will take away something that myself, Representative Rule, and Senator Shoemake worked hard to get in the transportation budget this last year, which is $1 million for a bicycle pedestrian trail for Kendall in East Whatcom County, so that students can safely get to school and the library. This is what's on the ballot. If this initiative passes, it is going to decimate our budget. And we're going to have to really look hard at how to evaluate that. But to answer the question specifically, Rebecca, how would we do that? As Vice Chair of the Transportation Committee in the House, I'm committed to working with budget writers if that initiative passes and how we can fill that hole. But darn, I hope it doesn't come to that. And please join me in voting no.
All right, thank you. I'm going to invite Bellingham High School student up, Hunter, who's going to ask the next question. And then, Mr. Timmons, you're going to be the person to ask that first. So thanks.
Good evening. My name is Hunter Mitchell, and I'm a senior here at Bellingham. I believe being civically engaged is important because it's as Friedrich Nietzsche said, those who cannot rule themselves will be commanded, and I believe this ability comes from participation and engagement. My question for the candidates is, what, if any, changes would you make to funding and support for mental health organizations and programs?
Thank you so much for this question. And behavioral mental health is a challenge in our community, and I'm committed to that along with many of my colleagues in Olympia. One thing that I've already done is I had a bill, House Bill 1823, that creates a low interest rate student loan program for students that want to pursue graduate school to go into fields for high demand fields with workforce shortages. Part of that is specifically for mental and behavioral health counselors. We know that substance use disorder is a real challenge in our state. We need to assist people experiencing addiction. And we also need to work upstream, in my opinion, to prevent addiction and trauma in the first place. Another bill that I had that didn't make it across the finish line was a bill that would increase social-emotional instruction in our K-12 schools. This would teach more empathy, which we know reduces bullying, reduces anxiety and depression, and I think would ultimately help prevent some of this addiction and mental health and behavioral health challenges, substance use disorder in the first place. So that's some stuff that I'm continuing to hopefully continue to work upon. We also got funding in this biennium for a 23-hour mental health crisis center right here in Bellingham. So I think when I look at this challenge, I think we need to do three things, frankly. I think we need to build more beds for mental health counseling and ensure that people suffering from acute mental health crisis and substance use disorder have access to services. We need to train our next generation of workforce to go into those jobs, ensure that those jobs pay well enough that we can attract and retain talented individuals to come serve in our community. And then I think we need to work upstream to prevent trauma in the first place. And if reelected, I'm committed to doing just that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bhachu, you want me to repeat, or?
Yes, please.
Okay. What, if any, changes would you make to funding and support for mental health organizations and programs?
I agree with a lot what my opponent, Joe Timmons, said. So the first thing first, I would provide low interest rates for if anybody is willing to go into this profession, which is counseling, and also we need more social worker out on the streets, and we also need places where if somebody's going through those crises, can they pick up a phone or can they go to those drop-in centers? Lighthouse Mission is doing a great job in that field also, and also find a way to decrease the patient loads in local hospitals. Currently, there are caregivers who are completely overwhelmed by the patient that go to the ER, and also find a way to have drop-in centers for local community, and those type of steps I would take to ensure that we have more mental health care providers and more places for people to go to. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Mr. Pelletti, we're going to go with you first on this question of your team. Just what changes, if any, would you make to funding and support for mental health organizations and programs?
I think our state is one of the top states in the nation where we educate people to be mental health professionals. We have organizations across our state, locally here in Bellingham, Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane, and they're doing as good a job as I would imagine anybody can be. And I'm sitting next to a mental health expert here, and I want to support her and her business because she's the one that works with them every day. But I think along with that, in this area, we need to look at drug addiction. And from what I understand, around 67 to 72% of the people that are on our streets are drug addicts. And then we tie them in with mental health issues because of the drugs. We need to take a direct attack on the drug issue in our state. We need to get the people off the streets that are addicts. We need to get them treatment. And one thing I like a little different than a lot of people, we can ask them if they want to come in for treatment. That's fine, glad to do it. And if they say no, then we give them an option. They can either move to a place where they can take care of themselves, or we will provide a place for them. And the drug addiction program has to run 6 to 9 months before these people can be out. We spend tons of money where we could build a campus in Eastern Washington, 200 acres. We'd have a hospital, a facility, an impound where you can bring them in, and treatment center, and a trade school where they could learn a trade so when they finished, they could go back into the community and be viable people. So Those people that are in the mental health profession, I applaud you. Nothing I can do, but I can sure support you in what you need to get done.
Great, thank you. Ms. Rule?
Thank you. I'm going to try to be fast. This is what I do. This is what I've been doing since I was a young person, and I still feel as passionate or more passionate about this than the day I started. Whether it's in my practice where we are training 31, we currently have 31 therapists who are passionately going after this youth mental health crisis. On a day-to-day basis, I see what our community is dealing with. I've never seen a youth mental health crisis like we have on our hands right now, never in my life. So we need to continue to expand services throughout the state for our youth, particularly in schools. We were able to get some extra funding for behavioral health in schools. It is not enough. Kids cannot learn when their brains are on fire, when they're in fight or flight. It doesn't matter what teacher you put in front of them, they are not able to absorb the information. So we must address that with what we know. When I first started, we had social workers tell us, this is what we think we know about kids and brains. We now can look at pictures. We know what we know. We must use that science to advance how we teach kids. But it's not just kids, although that is my passion. We must also have good quality services at every level in our community. We know that when we keep people in community, when they're getting treatment, they have better outcomes. I think we should prioritize better outcomes at every level, whether it's acute care, if somebody is suicidal or homicidal, or somebody who is in long-term substance use treatment, or long-term care. All of those pieces are important, and that's why I fight on the capital budget to build buildings as fast as we can, because we know we need them. We also have a crisis. We have a homelessness crisis that intersects with mental health issues. I brought back funding for the Lummi Health Center and Wellness Center for detox and treatment for substance use disorder, the Whatcom Crisis Center, as well as the 23-hour Behavioral Health
We're at
Center.
time.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question, the fifth question, we're going to start with you, Mr. Pelletti. Childcare is reported as a crisis across our state because of the number of children without adequate care. Whatcom County anticipates 6,000 children 5 and under will not be able to find care in 2025 unless slots are added. Should childcare, like education, be a state responsibility? If so, why? And if not, why not?
Well, I guess when I grew up, childcare was in your household, your parents, and that was a good thing. And if your parents had to work, they worked out a neighborhood babysitting center. We seem to work with that. 6,000 people in Whatcom County or the state?
6,000 children under 5 in Whatcom County.
That's a lot of kids in Whatcom County. I'd again go with my cohort here that they work with these people, they would know the answers, and I would support them in what they need to do to help protect these kids, get them services, get them the medical services, the housing they need. Whether the state should pay for that or not, I think we can step in and do some work, but I don't think we should be the parent of the student or the child. I think we should be able to maybe help fund it. I know there's several programs in our state and our county where we already fund a lot of these programs, and then I would have to back up and ask the question, why aren't they working? We're already putting in the money, why aren't we getting the results?
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rule?
Thank you. Respectfully, they're not working because they can't find childcare. I don't only work with these people, but I am these people. I'm a single mother of 3 kids, and we have patched it together to the best of our ability, and it's tough. I know there are many others who are doing the same. It is an impossible equation right now with childcare, the cost that it is, especially quality childcare, which we know is critical for those prevention services that we talked about earlier, and for people to be able to go back to work. It doesn't even make any sense. When you can't afford to go back to work, then what? It's terrible for our economy, it's terrible for our kids, and it's destroying our families. So we have to work on common sense solutions for childcare. I think we can do good work with government and business. I'm thrilled to be in partnership with both on this. Our business leaders in the community know, as well as our union representatives know, this is critical for us to move forward in the economy of today. We must fund childcare. We must look for bipartisan solutions that will allow for good quality childcare for our young people.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Timmons, do you want me to repeat that?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for this question. As I've said probably multiple times, we have a 4-year-old, my wife Heather and I. We went on waiting lists for childcare the minute he was born because we have such a shortage in our community. I really appreciate what Representative Rule talked about there from an economic standpoint. When I talk with business leaders, a lack of housing, workforce housing, and a lack of childcare is something that they bring up consistently, which not only will it help working families, but it will also help our economy to have more childcare options. We passed our budget the last 2 years, which had a historic investment in the Housing Trust Fund. I was just at a ribbon cutting recently for the Millworks project down at the waterfront that is for assisted living for seniors, using that fund, affordable housing. And with that comes a child care center right there through the YMCA. So the state is investing in this, and I think we have more to do. One of my things I'm most proud of too, in working with colleagues this last year, was to get funding for a new skill center at Meridian High School. This is going to create hands-on learning for folks who want to go into the trades, and it's also going to have an early learning facility right there in the heart of Whatcom County with up to 120 child care slots. So there are definitely things that we can do at the state level. I want to continue to do more for that, and I also want to hear from child care providers. If there is too much challenges, if you want to create a new child care center and there are challenges for you to do that, I want to hear from you. I want to figure out how we can help you get into this industry because we desperately need it in our community. And then lastly, I'll just end on, we know that the return on investment in quality early learning is something like 8 or 9 to 1, depending on how you look at it. Brains develop so critically at a young age. And not only do we do working families a disservice by having a lack of childcare, we do children a lack of service for the rest of their life if we don't give them adequate supports.
Thank you. Do you want me to repeat it?
Please.
So childcare is reported as a crisis across our state because of the number of children without adequate care. Whatcom County anticipates almost 6,000 children under 5 and under will not be able to find care in 2025 unless slots are added. Should child care, like education, be a state responsibility? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
So when it's come to child care, I think we should have both state and private. And another thing I would like to look into, why we have such a shortage of child care in our area. Does it have to be because we have too many regulations? I'm pretty sure both of our current House representatives probably know why we are where we at, right? So are there regulations? Can we cut those regulations and make it more feasible for somebody in our local neighborhood to start a child care? After COVID, there were a lot of child cares were shut down because they couldn't keep up with the regulations. So we have to look into both. Why we have such a shortage of daycare or child care facilities in our area, and how we can improve those. And I would work with anybody and everybody, whether it's local or at the state level, to take care of this issue that we're having right now. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to invite Cadence up right now, and she's going to ask our next question. And Mr. Bhachu, you're going to be the first one to respond to Cadence.
Hi, my name is Cadence Phelps. I'm a senior here at Bellingham High School. Thank you for having me here, and I'm very excited to have this opportunity to speak. I think being civically engaged is important because it is how we as Americans can enact the change we want to see. This applies especially to the upcoming generations. We must be civically engaged and educate ourselves on our society and how to better improve it. My candidate question is, what is the first steps you would take to address the issue of gun violence in public spaces?
Say that one
Of course. What is the first step you would take to address the issue of gun violence in public spaces?
So the first thing first, when it comes down to gun violence, there's some of it has to do with mental health issues that we're facing right now in our country. And in the state of Washington, we have some of the strictest gun laws in the entire country. Right now, currently speaking, we have assault weapon ban, which nobody can buy long rifles. And we have a high-capacity magazine ban in the state of Washington. And we also have pretty rigorous background checks when somebody is going to buy a firearm, so currently you can't buy a long rifle anyway. So to buy even a handgun, you can't just walk in any gun shop and walk out without having any background checks. Right now, we also have a 10 days mandatory waiting period. So people just can't go in and buy a firearm. They have to wait 10 days. And also we have lack of enforcement. People aren't facing consequences when they're out committing crime. Police officers can go out and enforce the law and arrest people, but they have no place to take them. So what we also have to do is we have to hire more police officers. Washington State is number 51 when it's come down to police officer per capita. I'm talking about Columbia, which is Washington, D.C. I'm talking about, that's why I said 51, number 51. So we are so far behind when it's come down to police officers per capita. And also, there's an enforcement issue. And that's one of the ways that we can tackle the gun violence in our communities. Mental health, we have to look into that.
Thank you. Mr. Timmons, what is the first step you would take to address the issue of gun violence in public places?
Well, thank you so much for this question. Let me start by saying I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, which is a leading organization in our state to help keep folks safe from gun violence. I think everyone deserves to feel safe in our community, and that includes going to public spaces. Last year, we did pass a bill to ban the sale of assault weapons in this state. It's a bill I'm very proud of. I was in 8th grade when Columbine happened, and it had a profound impact on me. I remember doing active shooter drills in high school, and I think folks should feel safe at schools and going to the grocery store and going to churches and temples, frankly. So I'm proud to be a leader in this state in having regulations and having laws in place to help protect people from gun violence. We passed a bill this year to expand where folks can bring firearms in public spaces. I think museums, libraries, aquariums join the list to help ensure that everyone's safe and can go to these places safely. So as I said, I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. I think there's more work to do for this, particularly in safe securing of firearms to ensure that they're not getting in hands of folks who can't legally purchase firearms. I do think that everyone has a right to protect themselves. I believe in the Second Amendment, but I think that we have more common sense measures that we can do to help ensure that everyone feels safe.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Rule, want me to repeat?
Thank you. I am also proud to have the endorsement of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility and several other groups that agree with me that common sense regulation around guns makes sense. And I'm happy to have supported those things. I also think that we can work on increasing mental health treatment. I also think that we need to support our law enforcement. All of those things are true. I'm particularly concerned with the access that we have to guns in our community for those who are not only mentally ill, particularly our youth, but those who are considering suicide and homicide. These are high risks. The instance of gun violence in domestic violence should be a concern to all of us. We need implementation of some of the good things that we have passed, and we need police officers to do that. So I do support and have been working very actively toward getting good quality trained police officers back up to speed in this state. That's critical. And we need to continue working on those behavioral health issues in schools, as you've heard me talk about lots before, because the more I study it, the more and I have studied it. I have 3 kids that I have to drop off at school every day and hope that they come back alive, and I know I'm not alone in that worry, but I'm continually concerned with the role of bullying in our schools and that intersection with school shootings. So certainly not the only place where we worry about this, but one place that's really at top of mind for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Pelletti, want me to repeat it? Okay. What's the first step you would take to address the issue of gun violence in public places?
Well, first of all, we got to step back a few years. We defunded the police several years ago. Seattle has a shortage of 500 officers, and they finally decided to raise the bounty to bring other policemen in down there because nobody wants to work in Seattle. But first of all, being a police person or a policeman is a tough job. In some jobs, shit happens. When you're dealing with criminals and felons, they don't necessarily want to abide by the rules. It was interesting when one guy got pulled over, he called 911 and said to the dispatcher, "Why are you pursuing me? The law says you can't chase me." Well, we finally changed that law and got it where the police can go do their job. We need to get felons off the street. All the crimes, or 99% of all the crimes, are committed by felons. These are people who got a gun illegally. All the background checks really don't matter. The waiting time to get your weapon doesn't matter because they are buying them on the black market. They are using them to commit crimes. And I am with you. We need to protect our kids at school. The schools are soft targets. There's a lot of soft targets in our state. Teachers and principals can decide whether they want to carry a firearm, because I can tell you, if you looked at all the history of when the shootings were occurring, as soon as the police came, the shooter dropped their gun. As soon as somebody came with a weapon, they dropped their gun. And if they know that there's somebody in that building with a weapon that can shoot back at them, they're not going to go in there. So we need to be able to take and protect our kids by using common sense practices, common laws, and we need to put people in jail that commit the crimes and quit letting them out on the street.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Rule, we're going to start with you on this one, and we have thank you from our audience. We have a couple of questions. So at the end of every legislative session, Olympia always complains about the things that didn't get done. There wasn't time to get them done. What's your opinion about whether Washington would be better served with a full-time legislator?
Thank you for asking that thought-provoking question. You know, here's the thing. We're always going to complain that we didn't get what we wanted because every single one of us goes down there, I hope, to fight for our district. I know I do. And it's important to me that we can deliver. And you know, anytime we miss on that, it's frustrating. We are passionate. I'm passionate about my community, and I go in there ready to go. You know, I want to make sure that we are delivering as many dollars back home as possible, and I want to make sure that we have policy that actually improves the lives of the people who live in my district. Whether or not that would be done better in a full-time or part-time, you know, legislature, I'm not sure if I know the answer. I see benefits and vulnerabilities on both. Something I really love is that I get to spend a lot of time in my community. I love being here with you all. I love hearing your stories, your hard stories, your celebratory stories. I want to know every day what's going on with you. Tell me how I can best help you. So I really do appreciate the idea of a citizen legislature. With that said, I also recognize that we have unprecedented amounts of crises work going on right now, and sometimes things move too slowly when we're only there for once a year, and I find that frustrating. Sometimes I wish we could bring things to a vote And we didn't have to wait a whole year to be able to do that. I don't exactly know how a full-time legislature would work, but I do welcome any idea that brings more representation, community representation, and real people into the legislature. I find it frustrating when I have colleagues that haven't had, clock in, clock out real jobs. I think that that kind of experience is invaluable when you're going to represent the people of your district. So, I think both things are important, and I'm willing and ready and excited to serve either way.
Thank you. Mr. Pelletti, what do you think about, what's your opinion about whether Washington would be better served with a full-time legislature?
Interesting question. I guess you got to go back to the early 1800s when it was decided that we would have a legislature, a House, and a Senate, and the farmers would come in, make the rules, discuss them, and then go back to their farms. Things have obviously changed since then. I don't know how that would be. I'd have to think it out, but I don't really think legislatures should be a full-time 12-month-a-year job. I sort of think it is already. It's just that you're one place for a certain amount of time, and then you're back in your community doing way more than you would do if you went home at 5 o'clock and punched out. So I'm following that. I also think we should have term limits. When you talk to somebody that's been in the legislature for 20, 25 years, it's a job, it's a political career, and I think they lose sight of their communities and their things that need to go on in their communities because they're working on staying in the legislature or the Senate, doesn't matter whether that's statewide or nationally. So I think even at statewide we should have term limits, maybe 3 terms, 4 terms as a House rep because you're 2 years at a time, and maybe 3 years as a senator, that's 12 years. And then you move on, more than likely become a lobbyist, and that's probably the way that would work. But so anyway, I guess that's one that just has to get thought out a little bit. It's a good question. I appreciate the question because we know going in it's a 12-month-a-year job. It's just that some of the months you're in Olympia and some of the months you're here. And I don't know about Alicia, what she would do with her 3 kids at school if she was in Olympia every day of the year.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bhachu.
I'm not there yet, so all I can do is just give you my opinion. So I have to agree with Alicia and Ray on the term limit. And also what Alicia said, if you are down in Olympia entire year, then you don't have the time to connect with your constituents and work with them and get to visit them and find out what their needs are and what's going on in the community. So I would say let's keep it part-time so I could come back and, connect with the people because you are there to represent and be their voice. That's your job. So I would like to keep it part-time. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Timmons.
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. It's so unique that every state does it differently, right? Ultimately, as a legislator, I don't think this is a decision that should be on me to decide. I think this is something that the people should decide. We have an initiative process, and I think that ultimately, me being in this position, I would welcome a decision coming from elsewhere if there was to be a change. But I do want to say that, this calendar is a bit archaic. It's built around an agricultural calendar. Obviously, not everyone is farmers. And I will say, too, one thing that I'm really passionate about is ensuring that we have representation in our democracy. We have a 4-year-old, as you've heard me say. My wife Heather works full-time in public health. I'm not complaining about this, but it's really challenging, frankly, going down there and being late nights. Sometimes we vote on the House floor until midnight, 1, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And so I think, ensuring that we have a representative democracy where our legislature is not comprised overwhelmingly of independently wealthy or retired individuals. Nothing wrong with those demographics, but they're not representative of our entire community. So ultimately, I think that this is something that the people should think about and make an ultimate decision on.
Great, thank you. All right, we have another question from the audience. And on this one, I'm going to start with you, Mr. Timmons. As we switch to EV cars, how would you suggest we raise money for the roads in this state?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just going to touch on one thing I just forgot to mention in the last one, which is, a full-time legislature, there's different models out there. Obviously, there's 49 other states. It wouldn't necessarily mean being in Olympia year-round. You could have more recesses where you come home and hear from constituents. So I just wanted to mention that. That's a fantastic question, Rebecca. As a transportation committee member, something that we really discuss a lot, right? We are reliant on a gas tax in our state. We are encouraging individuals to electrify their modes of transportation, and we know that electric vehicles are heavier. So what that does is it creates more wear and tear on our roads, so we have more maintenance and infrastructure challenges as a result of that. There's a conversation, ongoing policy discussion in Olympia about a road usage charge called RUC. I'm still getting my head around the pros and cons of all of that, essentially charging people for the miles they travel, rather than the price at the pump and filling them up there to help maintain our roads. I have some concerns with that from an equity perspective, because I think there are a lot of folks in our community, frankly, who work in Bellingham and can't afford to live here, and they live further out in Everson or they live in Sumas, and I don't want to put a disproportionate burden on them in order to get to work and back. So I think it's a challenge. It's a discussion that happens every year in Olympia, committed to being at the table on behalf of our community, but that also not only means folks in our urban environments, but our rural residents as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bhachu.
Please repeat the question.
I'm happy to repeat it. As we switch to EV cars, how would you suggest we raise money for the roads in the state?
So I would have to agree with Joe just said. And also, I have an EV car, and I drive it every day, and it serves my need. So I live in Blaine, and I drive it to my work, which is in Bellingham. So it's right around, it's a Nissan Leaf. So EV car tabs, you pay higher cost when you renew your tabs. So I currently pay about somewhere in the neighborhood of $315. So it's already higher than a regular gas car. So I didn't really get a chance to read where all those, where the money is going, how they are dividing it. I believe they're already charging you, because since EV cars are heavier, they are already charging us higher fees, which goes to to maintain roads and bridges. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Pelletti, how would you suggest we raise money for the roads in the state when we're going to EV cars?
Well, first of all, we're not ready for EV cars. The governor wanted to put how many thousand EV stations across the state at 50,000 apiece, and we all went, where's he getting the money? Secondly, if you're going to have an EV car, you are using the road. You're just not buying gas, so you're not paying into the road tax. I think there's already a $200 a year tax on EVs. And one of my concerns is when they say, oh, we'll just track the mileage. Well, I don't mind you tracking the mileage, but I do mind you tracking where I go. And if they're going to use them as a tracking device to see where you travel, that's got my attention, and I've not been happy about that thought. So if everybody wants to pay their fair share, well, I guess you need to step up and pay your fair share if you're going to have an EV. And Washington State is a pretty good-sized state. So if you're going to go from here to Spokane in an EV, you better take a lunch, because you probably have to stop somewhere and charge up. We like to go up in the mountains and drive around, go back roading, see the beaches, go across to Walla Walla for a glass of wine, and EVs probably aren't our source for there, so you may want to keep a backup gas vehicle in your garage.
Thank you. Ms. Rule.
Yes, I think our budget questions really are about wise use of what we have, and as we see the move to increased EVs, we are going to have to take a look at how we shift how we budget our money. But I also have to take the opportunity to talk about the idea of a road usage charge. As we speak about representative democracy, it makes my skin crawl. I'm like, no, anything but that, and I'll tell you why. I have 3 kids. They are all in activities constantly, so I feel like a taxi driver myself as a parent, and I work in Bellingham, and I serve my whole community. we need to look for solutions that are more equitable. We also need to build out alternatives. So we need to do a better job of building out our public transportation system so that we can have alternatives to having to drive everywhere. I think that sounds wonderful. I think it would take a lot of pressure off of people like me and maybe like you as well, but certainly not looking to do a road usage charge, and definitely looking toward alternatives and using the money that we have in appropriate ways as we see changes. We do that all the time. We can do that with this as well.
Okay, thank you. This is going to be our last question, and it's from the audience, and it's a follow-up question, so good for them. And we're going to start with Mr. Pelletti. So on the housing issue, there is a lack of buildings, but what will you do about the costs?
Well, first of all, the lack of building is multiple phases in there. The government's the number one obstacle to building. The regulations, the zoning, the permitting, where you can build, what you can build, and what you have to put into it. Builders right now have to add more green features to their house in order to get enough credits, but they don't get any money for it because the government doesn't pay them any money to put these green features in. They have to put it in the price. Well, if you sell a house, we'll make it up for $400,000, and you have to put $20,000 more cost into it. You don't get $20,000 more cost in it. You just lose $20,000 of your profit margin, and that might mean how many people you can hire to work on that house or how much longer it takes. So the state a year ago decided as the state level to rezone the entire state of Washington and put single-family housing lots and make them multi-family housing lots. Now, that doesn't mean you can't build your single-family house on your lot. That's up to you. But you know your neighbors on both sides of you, if they decide they can put 6 units on their lots and make more money, now you live in a lot where you got 6 houses on both sides of you. That's not what you decided to buy that lot where you built for, so now you have to deal with that. The other thing is housing costs are not coming down, in case anybody missed the memo. Housing costs are going up. There's 2 or 3 factors that drive housing prices. First of all is the cost of the land. Washington State has the west side of Washington State has some of the highest land costs in the nation. They aren't coming down. When I go to a seminar and somebody says, hey, we sold a house for $250,000, and I'm going, wow, that's pretty good. We can't even buy a lot for $250,000. We're in trouble. Labor's up. It's not going down. And regulations are up and expanding. They're not going away.
Okay, Ms. Rule, we know there's a lack of buildings, but what will you do about the costs?
Yeah. Thank you for asking the question. It's directly related. The fact is, we need more housing. We need a variety of housing, and we need to build more of it. Just to correct the record, it doesn't mean that every single family lot now has the ability to do an ADU. We have some stipulations around that, but in any case, we have to build more units. We also have to continue to make it easier to build. We are looking at potential for transit-oriented development. I think we need to continue moving that and expanding the housing where it's appropriate. If you don't like the idea of having a multifamily house or a multifamily building in your neighbor's yard in town, you're probably looking at having kids living in cars or people landing on your stoop. We need more housing. There's no way to solve this without it. We also need to continue to work toward good, solid, living wage jobs in this community. We are short on them. We need to continue building out those jobs. I think the apprenticeship programs that we know will come out of the Skills Center are going to be helpful toward that for our youth. But the fact is, our kids, I'm 5 generations from Whatcom County in my family. I don't know what it looks like for not even a future for our children, but a current for our children. It is too expensive and the jobs aren't keeping up. So I'm going to continue to work toward high-paying jobs for our community, as well as increase that stock of housing. And then we've got to work on some of the other pieces too. We can't go to a high-paying job or even a moderately paying job if you can't access and afford childcare. So all of these things work together, and as a long time, many year now, social worker. This is what I do. This is what I do well, and I will continue to change those systems here in Whatcom County.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Timmons.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go back to what I touched on a little bit during the question around homelessness, because this is going to be a priority of mine if reelected, is trying to help address our housing shortage crisis and to support tenants and first-time home buyers alike. As I said, our rent went up 35% here in Whatcom County, just down the street in 2021. We had a one-year-old at the time. It was really hard on me and my wife, Heather. Luckily, we were saving up and we were able to get into a home, purchase our first home. I'm 39 years old, and I want everyone to have the opportunity to own a home if they want. And folks can't save up for a down payment, or they can't save up for a medical emergency, or for higher education tuition if they're spending all their money on rent and housing. We had a bill from Representative Alvarado that passed out of the House this last year that I really hope we pass out and that the Senate agrees with us, to have a rent stabilization, which would cap rent at 7% annually across the state, but having an exemption for new build. And why that's so important, I believe in supply and demand economics. I just think this market is off balance. I think demand far exceeds supply. The only way that we're ultimately going to build down housing costs for everyone is to build more, but in the meantime, we need to do more to protect tenants and to protect renters. It is very challenging for working families when their rent goes up and they need to move, and their child now needs to move, maybe switch schools. So this is very much on top of my mind, something I'm going to be committed to working on if reelected, and I really hope that people will support creative and thought-provoking and really well-worked bills like this in Olympia if I'm reelected.
Thanks. Okay, Mr. Bhachu, on housing, again, there's a lack of buildings, but what will you do about the costs?
Okay, so I've been paying attention to politics for almost 8 years now. I hear the exact same song and dance every 2 to 4 years. We need to build more. We need to cut regulations. What are you guys doing to do that? You know, I'm asking both of you guys. You guys been in the politics for, as far as I can remember, 6 years. Yes, you just recently got elected and you replaced Ms. Sharon Shoemake. So what are you guys doing to do that? Because, I mean, I've been hearing the exact same thing. So I have 4 kids. You know, one of them just barely able to afford a house because her husband was in the military. They were able to use his bill. So we need to cut regulation. There's no other way around it. We are 1 million housing units short in the state of Washington. I think our politicians are at fault. I'm saying it bluntly. You know, it's frustrating, especially in our country. Everybody's talking about homelessness. Yes, we need to build more units, but how are you guys going to do that? It's up to the representatives. Whether you guys need to talk to your colleagues or whether you guys need to talk to the Republicans, let's bring everybody on board so we could do this. Perfect example would be 4 years ago, my brother and I, we built a house. We had to do a stormwater runoff plan. It has to be engineered. To get it engineered, it was $5,000. To get it installed, that was another $8,000 to $10,000. That's another added $15,000 on top of everything else. So we need to cut costs. We need to get rid of some of the regulations that are terrible. We need to audit some of these regulations that aren't working. Government is very good at coming up with new regulations, but they're terrible at get rid of the old regulations that aren't working. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, it's now time for everyone's closing statements. As you'll recall, you each get 1 minute for your closing statement, and we're going to start with Mr. Pelletti.
Again, thank you for coming out tonight. This is a great time to get out and meet the other candidates and express our things. I'm a United States Air Force veteran. I spent 4 years in the United States Air Force as a supply sergeant. You learn to show up for work, you learn to do your job, and you understand what you're expected to do. We need to do that in our community. We need to help train our younger people that you need to show up for work, you need to do your job, and you need to do well. We need to work together and find solutions for these problems that have been brought up tonight. We can do that, but we can't do it if it takes 10 years to figure out a one-year solution. We have to get right on it and come up with problems. We've been at some of these issues for 10, 12 years. They're still not solved. And what's happened during that 10 or 12 years is the costs have all gone up. So let's talk, let's work together, let's have a discussion. My door is always open, and if you call me, I will return your call.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rule.
Thank you. I have been proud to serve as your representative in Olympia for the past 4 years, and I'm proud of the work that we've done, particularly in behavioral health. Many of the buildings that are fully funded haven't been built yet. So look forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing those services increase in our community. It's important to me that I represent you, and I come to you with a servant legislator heart, and a commitment to that. I work with both Republicans and Democrats every day. And I do that because I know that the people in our community have more in common than they have difference. Because of that, I have been endorsed by nearly every organization that has stakeholders working in Olympia, almost everyone. And that's unusual because, I believe and I know and have led with a record that says both labor and business are important. We can't have one without the other. I've been endorsed by NAMI, NASW, firefighters, all law enforcement, and
Thank you
teachers
very
and
much.
nurses. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Timmons, 1 minute.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the thoughtful questions. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's a deep honor to serve this community in Olympia. I would be honored to have your vote and to serve our community again in Olympia. I share a lot of opinions with what has been said about working across the aisle. Whatcom County is a politically diverse community, and I really appreciate that. I had 14 bills in my first term, the majority of which are co-sponsored by Republicans. I don't think one party has a monopoly on good ideas. So I'm committed to continuing to work across the aisle if reelected. Similar to, as Representative Rule said, please take a look at my website, votejoetimmons.com. I'm proud to have the endorsement of nearly 50 organizations, including the Association of Washington Business, Washington State Labor Council, law enforcement, firefighters, you name it. Please take a look. I'd be honored to have your support and to continue to do the good work on behalf of our community in Olympia. And thank you for your engagement. These kind of conversations matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhachu.
Yes, I would like to say thank you so much to each and every one of you guys coming here and being here. And like I said before, this is my old stomping ground. I came to U.S. in 1996 and started my school here at Bellingham High School when it used to be the old building. And I'm so happy to be here. And to most of you guys are the students here, you guys are the future of this country. And get involved, respect your teachers and your parents. That's a big thing. And if you have grandparents, please hang out with them because they have treasure of knowledge. And I would like to say I have worked very hard throughout my life to get to where I'm at today, and you can expect the same thing out of me. And I've been endorsed by Whatcoms and local builders. So. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here again. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and Bellingham High School, I thank the candidates for being here today and for their interest in running for public office. I also thank Mrs. Rydell and Bellingham High School. It has been really fun working with you. Voters can find more information about the candidates online at vote411.org and in your voter pamphlet. Ballots will be mailed on October the 16th. Your ballot must be postmarked or in a ballot drop box before 8 p.m. on November the 5th. Please remember to sign the ballot envelope, and if mailing by postal service, we recommend mailing early. Thank you.